Hello everyone, Jeremy here, and today I want to talk about the importance of modding in Warframe, because you will soon realize that without properly modding your weapons and your Warframe, you will die quickly. And you might find yourself going to the second planet and wondering why you are getting your butt handed to you constantly. It's not necessarily because the game scales up in difficulty really fast. It's because mods play a very important role, and unfortunately Warframe does not do the best job at explaining the mod system. So that's what this video is going to be about if you are new playing this on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or PC. So let me just give you a little example here. I'm carrying a Bursting Prime, which is currently at level 7, and it does not have any mods on it. Now, unlike some other games where leveling up makes everything that you have on you stronger, it doesn't necessarily work that way with Warframe weapons. In Warframe, when your weapons level up, they don't get any stronger. The only thing that happens is the mod capacity increases. So if you look down at the bottom, near the bottom of the screen where that blue bar is, it says mod capacity remaining 7 out of 7. And this basically means that every time I go up a level, my weapon gets one more mod capacity, which goes all the way up to 30. Unless you apply an Orkin Catalyst, which will double it to 60, but we're not going there yet. Let's just stick to the basics. So when you want to mod out your weapon, you have all these slots right here. You have these 8 slots, and these 8 slots are where you can put your mods. You're going to collect mods as you go through the game, and enemies will drop them, and you will collect a ton of mods. But the trick is understanding what mods to use for a specific situation, and more importantly, for a specific weapon. So right now, I don't have any mods on here whatsoever. And you can see my stats. I have a fire rate of 10. I have a status chance of 15%, 5% critical chance with 1.5 times damage if I hit a critical, and 11.7 impact, 11.7 puncture, 15.6 slash. What does it all mean? Well, just know that basically at this point in the game, those are just the base damage stats for this weapon with absolutely no mods. And I'm going to take this Bursting Prime onto the very first level in Mercury, an exterminate mission, and we're going to see how much damage this weapon does unmodded against some of the weakest enemies in the game. So here we are on Mercury. Some of the weakest enemies in the game are here, and as I continue to maul through them with the Bursting Prime, you're going to notice certain numbers that always seem to pop up. And we're getting 38 damage, and sometimes we're getting 42 damage, and we might get a little bit more depending on whether or not we get a headshot. But generally, that's how much damage we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing somewhere between 38 and maybe about 60. And even though the Bursting Prime is a weapon that you can only get running void missions, which are missions that you're going to be doing once you get a little bit deeper into the game, even going up against these weaker enemies, it cannot necessarily kill them in one shot. And that's just because I don't have any mods on it. Now, if this weapon were properly modded, I would be causing much more damage to these enemies. So instead of seeing 38 and 42 and sometimes 60, you will be seeing numbers up in the hundreds. And as we get more mods on there, up into the thousands. So now that we see what things are like unmodded, let's see what this weapon can do once we slap some mods on it. So now that we're back on the ship, we can start customizing the Bursting Prime to do a little bit more damage than what we saw before. And we do still have the 7 mod capacity points, so we can equip whatever mod that we want that is at least 7 points or less, which means we can put Fast Hands on here, means we can put Eagle Eye on here, but we couldn't put a mod like Hellfire on because that requires 10 mod points and we only have 7. But what we're going to do instead, we're going to increase the overall damage of our rifle, and we're going to do that by using a mod called Serration. And get used to this mod, because unless they change the way that mods work, Serration is going to be a mainstay on all of your assault rifle builds. This mod in particular is at level 6, and it will give me 105% extra damage. Now you might notice how I'm only using 5 of my mod points, even though when it's in my inventory, Serration says that it needs 10. Well, that's because I have a matching polarity slot. And what that is the little symbol that's on the upper right-hand corner of the card. You see that this symbol looks like a V, and then there are other cards with different symbols. This symbol looks like a D, for example, and this symbol looks like a dash. And basically the way that it works is as long as the symbol on the card matches the symbol that your weapon has already slotted into it, when you equip it, it would only use half of the mod points that it normally would use. So instead of using 10, we're only using 5. And look at the difference that is done to my damage stat-wise. We now have 23.7 impact damage as opposed to 11.7, 23.7 puncture damage, and 31.6 slash damage. So that should do very well against these low-level Grineer enemies on Mercury. So right now, let's head right back to them and see how much more damage we can do in actual combat. So here we are back on Mercury with a level 6 Serration mod equipped, and now when we shoot the Grineer, we're doing about 77 damage when we just shoot them in the body. Just regular base damage, no crits, none of that other stuff, just regular base damage. And that takes us up from about 38 damage. So we have essentially about doubled the amount of base damage that we do just by putting on that one mod. And that's to say nothing about what if we were getting critical hits, or what if we had a really high status chance and we were making enemies catch on fire or just become covered with radiation or cold damage or viral damage. Those are some of the more advanced mechanics when it comes to mods. But if you're just looking for pure base damage, shoot the guys and see what numbers come up, then that is why it's so important to equip the proper mods. So if you have a weapon and you think that it's just not doing enough damage, or even if you think it is doing enough damage, you always want to put a damage mod on there anyway, because the enemies will continue to get more difficult, and if you're not properly equipped, they will take you down quickly and without prejudice. Now let's take an even more exaggerated approach to this, and for this example I'm going to use the Paris Prime, which can be one of the strongest weapons in the game. And as you can see, I have a lot of mods on this weapon to increase its overall damage, its critical chance, its critical damage, and some elemental combos as well. And if I take this build here and take it to Mercury against the Grineer, those low-level Grineer, I start getting some pretty insane damage numbers. Now, believe it or not, this is not as strong as the Paris Prime can be. It may seem like it's a very, very strong weapon at the very beginning of the game, but once you take the time to properly form this weapon and really mod it out to maximize its damage potential, you will get even higher numbers than this. And it really makes a lot of enemies, even up into some of the higher levels, go down without too much of a fight. And it's all because the mods that are on this weapon are ranked high enough and are appropriate for this weapon to maximize its potential. And I'm going to try the exact same thing now, except I'm taking away every single mod that is on the Paris Prime, and instead it is just naked, bare bones. Now take a look at the damage that it does now. Nowhere near the amount of damage as it did before. Yeah, occasionally you'll run into some critical damage and you'll get, 1,000, 2,000. But overall, you have a very slow firing speed, which really hurts your overall DPS, and it could end up with you getting shot a lot because you can't fire quickly enough. And it's just not as good of a weapon anymore because those mods are not bringing out its true potential. So even though this is a more of an extreme example of how important mods are, I still think that it's very useful because we've just seen a weapon go from an overall powerhouse to a little bit of maybe about a swarm of bees. Still effective, but not nearly as effective as it could be. So that's my little demonstration of how important mods are in Warframe. So when you start playing the game, or if you're playing it right now, you can have a much better idea of what you can do in order to get stronger and fight at higher levels like so many other people do. They make it look easy, but it really is just a matter of understanding how all the mechanics work. So thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I'm Jeremy, and I will talk to you later.